Well, good morning. I want to welcome you to another week of Thought for the Day, and hopefully you had a good weekend. It was good to see you at church yesterday. Those of you who came out and were part of our worship on Sunday morning, it's great to see people beginning to be able to come back into worship. Even though we're facing many restrictions at the moment, we thank God that our churches are still open and we still have this freedom to come and safely worship God together. And it's just so great to continue to see new faces in the congregation, people I haven't had the chance to meet yet. So thank you for that. Regardless of who you are or where you're watching from today, I want to welcome you. We're looking at, still in Mark chapter 1, coming close to the end of Mark chapter 1. But really this week, we're looking at the passage we looked at yesterday morning, Sunday morning. And this is the passage to do with Jesus healing or cleansing the man with the unclean spirit, and then going to the house of Andrew and Peter, and then the wonderful miracle of his mother-in-law being raised from illness. So this morning we're really thinking about what actually happened that Sabbath morning. So Jesus, we read there in verse 21, and they went into Capernaum, and immediately on the Sabbath he entered the synagogue and was teaching. And they were astonished at his teaching, for he taught them as one who had authority and not as the scribes. Once again we come across this word immediately that Mark seems to use. He seems to throw it in all over the place. Sometimes it doesn't make sense when he uses it, because he says a little bit later on, and immediately there was in the synagogue a man with an unclean spirit. So immediately Jesus goes to the synagogue and immediately this man appears. But before this man appears, there's a word which I want us to think about for just a moment or two this morning. It says there, and they were astonished at his teaching. Astonished at Jesus' teaching. Because up until now, very often the scribes would have got up, they would have read a portion from God's word, they would have explained what Rabbi so-and-so says about this, or they maybe have gone into basically a commentary of sorts, read what has been said about it. Everyone would have gone, okay, we've maybe heard that before, that's interesting, but it's God's word to us today, so that's fine. But all of a sudden Jesus comes in, and Jesus doesn't quote anyone else, but Jesus basically says, this is how it is. This is how I understand God's word. This is how you need to understand God's word. And all of a sudden they were listening to somebody who they'd never heard before. This is Jesus' first time speaking in this sense, giving his own testimony for who God was. And so for them, they've never heard anything like this. Not only, I think, were they astonished that Jesus was doing it in his own authority, but I also feel that they were astonished because this was Jesus speaking about things that he seemed to know more about than most people. He was telling them things that really only Jesus could have told them, because he was the Son of God. Now they obviously were not sure who he was yet. They'd maybe heard reports about him. Maybe some of them had been down at the time when he was baptized, and they'd seen the dove come down, etc. So they knew there was something special about him. But just this thought of being able to hear Jesus explain God's word to you, it astonished them. And I'm sure if we could go and hear Christ speak about God's word in the way that they had that opportunity, we perhaps would be astonished too. Or would we? I sometimes wonder, we're living in such a modern world with so many things at our disposal, so many opportunities, that sometimes when we read God's word, when we sit down with our Bibles, sometimes the Bible's the last thing that really astonishes us. Sometimes we do our daily readings because we've always done them and we don't like to break a habit. Sometimes we do them because we do enjoy hearing God speak to us. But how often do we come away astonished at what we've read, what we've been taught by God from his word? Just the other morning I was just finishing off my daily readings, and as I was coming to the end of the passage, I read something I'd never read before. It was from one of the Psalms, Psalm 95. Never read it before, never thought about it before, but it was as if God had taken a light, and instead of shining it down the way I've always read it, the light moved around and came down from a different angle. And I read something with a different perspective, and it really astonished me. I remember sitting amazed at it and jotting down notes on it, thinking, that's incredible. That's a wonderful thought. And so I want to encourage you, when you do your daily readings, and maybe you've fallen away, maybe you've got out of the habit of doing daily readings, I want to encourage you not to just use this thought for the day as your one moment where you draw aside from worldly things and focus on things of God, but to try and get back into the Bible. Get yourself daily reading notes, or just decide to pick a good verse or passage in the Bible and to think about it, pray about it, make notes on it, journal about it, and try and allow God to speak to you in a fresh way. Pray before you start to read it, that through your reading, God would shine a light in a direction you've never seen before, that he would speak directly to you, and that you would come away astonished at what God's taught you. Let's not become so confident that we know everything about the Bible that God has been given no room to astonish us. God's word still astonishes us. God still teaches us through his word. And so hopefully at the start of this new week, this Monday morning, you'll allow God to astonish you afresh as you make that time, as you carve out that time in the day when you put other things aside and you let God teach you from his word. Great to have you with us this morning, and I look forward to being with you again tomorrow morning, God willing. Thank you.